Hello everyone. Today we have started a new class on the development. As you know, this is the class of development economics. So here we are going to discuss about this module, the module number 2.2, that is something related with poverty, that is the types of poverty, and at the same time we will discuss about the measurement of development and the development gap, the concept of development gap. This e-kit is conceptualized and designed by Dr. Vimal Rath, and the acknowledgement is going to Professor Ved Prakash, Professor A.K. Bakshi, Professor Bhanumurthy, Dr. Singh, Dr. Takral, Dr. Zulka, Dr. Arora, and Dr. Sarita Pasi. Myself, Dr. Shrutikana Ghosh from Scottish Church College, Kolkata, West Bengal. I am going to discuss about the poverty. So, what is the poverty? Poverty means something lacking, right? So, you can measure poverty from several aspects of the socio-economic factors. There may be educational poverty, there may be health poverty, there may be wealth poverty. But in general, people are only concerned about the wealth or the income poverty. That means whether a person has a sufficient money or wealth or not. So here also we are going to discuss about this type of poverty. So look at this picture. You can understand this is a picture of poverty. Once you are facing the poverty, this is very common. So what is poverty? Poverty is the situation where people don't have money. How much money they need? People need the money to sustain their life. So there should be a minimum standard of living for each of the people, each of the person. So if the person doesn't have the money to maintain its minimum standard of living, then the person is considered as a poor. So without this much of money, what is the meaning of the minimum standard of living? That means people must have that much of money which can help him to sustain his life. Okay, so this is the poverty. Now there are different types of poverty. Generally, it is differentiated in terms of absolute poverty and the relative poverty. Now, absolute poverty means the person whose income is less than minimum per capita consumption expenditure per month. Look, here I am going to introduce a new concept, that is the minimum per capita consumption expenditure. What is that? Actually, this is the consumption expenditure. You can understand this is actually the consumption expenditure. So, consumption expenditure per person per month. Okay. So, there is a basket actually. There is a basket. Within the basket, there are some commodities which is assumed to have, which are assumed to must have by the persons, by the individuals to live. So the current price of this particular basket, that price is called the consumption expenditure per month. So this is actually how you can measure the poverty line. So if the person whose income is less than this minimum per capita consumption expenditure, then this person is considered to be a poor person. So here the absolute numbers in a society, there are 5 persons who doesn't have that much of money. So that 5 is the number of poor. So absolute number matters in that case of absolute poverty. Whereas in the relative poverty, what is what is the process to calculate the relative poverty? Relative poverty is like that when you have a society. Say you have a society. Within the society there are 10 individuals. Each of the individuals are different income. So you have to arrange their income in some way, in some order. It may be increasing order, it may be decreasing order, but you have to arrange the income level. Then you have to find out the middlemost income of this total series. That is the median. By definition, this is the median value. Now you have to check the persons whose income is less than the median value. Those persons are called relatively poor. So you can understand in the developed country as well, you can find relatively poor person. Okay, so in the less developed country, relative poverty is not so important. They are more concerned about the absolute poverty. Look at this picture. So in the less developed country, this is the poor person. But in the developed country, you may find a poor person like this. So he is actually the relatively poor. Okay? He may not be poor if he entered in any less developed country, but he is poor in his own country, which is actually a developed country. Okay, so this is the difference between the absolute poverty and the relative poverty. Now, you can measure poverty in some other respect as well, that is the capability failure. This is actually introduced by Professor A.K. Shen, who is saying that the failure of the person, the capability failure of a person is actually the poverty, is not in terms of income of the person. So, capability in terms of what? Capability in terms of access to food, the capability in terms of access to education, capability in terms of access to medicine. So once the person doesn't have the capability to access food, education, and medicine, the person is called poor. That may not be because he doesn't have the money. He may have money, but because of some other reason, he cannot get these three things. Any of these three things. Then the person is called poor. Now, human poverty. Human poverty is generally measured by the deprivation. That means once you don't have the money, don't have the capacity, I should not say money, if a person doesn't have the capacity or access um, to be healthy in the society, if the person doesn't have the access to be educated, once the person doesn't have the capacity to maintain a minimum standard of living, then the person is called poor. This is the concept of the human poverty. Now, I'm coming to another side of this class, that is the development. As I said, you can understand poverty is actually the obstacle to the development, right? So in that case, once you are discussing about the poverty, the development concept is coming, that how you are measuring development. Actually, when that development concept was introduced in the society, initially it was measured in terms of per capita income. What is per capita income? It is the total income of the nation, that is the national income, divided by total population of the nation. Okay, so this is actually a ratio. So initially, per capita income was measured, initially the development was measured in terms of per capita income. But this measurement has some problem. So what are those problems? The first one is the traditional method. For example, once you are going to calculate the national income for less developed countries, especially, there are a lot of people who are engaged in the agricultural sector. The part of the agricultural product they have consumed, then after, whatever left, they are going to sell it in the market. So as they have already consumed, it is not calculated as a part of national income, but actually this is produced. So it should be included in the national income, but as there is a lack of data of that part, of the consumption part, you may not get the proper calculation of the national income. This is the first problem. The second problem is the national income calculation. Some people are saying that okay, national income is a good measure of the a good representative of the economy, but there are some people who are saying no, expenditure is a better measure of the economic condition. So there is a controversy or there is a confusion regarding the term national income. The statistical problem. Statistical problem is again like this. Some people are saying that national income should be calculated in terms of total product, and some people are saying no, it should be calculated in terms of expenditure. So this problem is there. Now consider another country who is, consider a country who is producing luxury goods. But it may possible that the country is actually poor. The people are starving. But the structure of his production is like that he is producing a lot of luxury goods. So the production or the national income is not the true picture of the development. As your people is starving, you are not developed, but you are producing luxury goods. That may possible. Now, infrastructure problem. Infrastructure problem is also another problem of the less developed country, because you can find, for example, you can find that while producing countries, they are very rich in that sense, but inequality, income inequality is very strong there. There are some people who are begging, but there are rich people as well. So you cannot, what I am trying to say, because of all those problems, you cannot consider per capita income as a true measure of development. So I'm coming to the next part, that is the development gap. What is development gap? Development gap means that the gap between the developed part of the world with the less developed part of the world. Okay, by definition. Now the question is how to measure. The very next question is how to measure the development gap. Now, as you can measure development in terms of income, as we have already said, and there is a problem, as I discussed, that there is a problem of that income measurement. So, what are the alternative of development measure? You can measure development in terms of education. You can development measure in terms of health, infrastructure, etc., etc. So, the same indicator you can use to measure the development gap as well. So, the measurement unit of the development gap is education, health, income, wealth, etc. etc. But the very popular measure of the development gap, or the very common measure of development gap, is the income inequality, which is actually measured by the per capita income. So, generally, development gap is measured in terms of the per capita income. Now, to explain the development gap, the economist has divided the development process of any of the countries in three stages. The first stage is the preparatory stage, the second one is the take-up stage, and the third one is the stage of self-sustained growth. So the development gap is measured in each and every stage between the countries or between the continents, between the parts of the world. So they are just trying to find out whether the gap between the development level is increasing over the stages or not. If it is increasing, then it is not at all good for the less developed part. And if it is decreasing, then obviously it is good. Now, how to measure? So you can find out what is the unit of development gap measurement. This is the per capita income. The next question is how to measure. So you can measure the development gap in terms of absolute income gap, where you are just taking the per capita income of two nations, and based on their difference, you can find out whether over time it is increasing or decreasing. Now, the relative income gap is the ratio between the developed countries' per capita income and the less developed countries' per capita income. If the ratio is increasing, then it is bad because the gap is widening. If it is decreasing, then it is good. They are converging. Now, the standard deviation, the standard deviation is actually the unit fear measurement of the difference. So once the value of the standard deviation is low, then it is good. And if it is more, then it is bad. Coefficient of variation is actually related with the standard deviation, and the Gini coefficient is a very popular measure of the inequality measurement. So higher Gini coefficient close to 1 is not at all good for the world as a whole. That means the gap is increasing. And if the value of the Gini coefficient is close to 0, that means there is no such significant inequality. So it is good. So these are the things which I wanted to share with you regarding the poverty and the development gap. So I hope you've enjoyed the class. So in the next class, we will meet with some new topic. Thank you, and practice, listen the class carefully, And at the same time, practice. We are sharing a lot of material, assignments. So keep practicing. I think it will be better for you. Thank you.